Resident Evil, released in 2002, is undoubtedly the best zombie movie in American film history and the most successful adaptation of a game into a zombie film. Even after more than 20 years, it is still hailed as an unsurpassable classic masterpiece by countless fans. You might not have watched this movie, but you must have seen some of its iconic scenes, such as the researcher manipulating the robotic arm, the man being sliced into pieces by lasers, and even the woman falling from the elevator. Every shot leaves a lasting impression. Even the background music of this movie has become one of the most classic soundtracks in zombie films. Let's take a trip back to the perilous Raccoon City, where all the evil originated from the Umbrella Corporation. Umbrella Corporation is the largest company in the United States, with its business covering almost every household. On the surface, it is a top computer technology and healthcare provider in the world, but its main source of profit comes from cooperation with the military, conducting genetic experiments and researching bioweapons. Due to the highly classified nature of the work, even the company's employees remain completely unaware. Underneath Raccoon City lies the Umbrella Corporation's experimental base called the Hive, the starting point of the entire biohazard story. A man in a protective suit operated a robotic arm and took away several vials of blue and green experimental potions in the lab respectively. Blue is the virus, and green is the antidote. Before leaving the lab, he intentionally breaks one bottle of the virus. The T-virus is volatile, and it quickly spreads through the air conditioning system throughout the facility. The employees didn't notice anything unusual. Only the dogs in the cages sense the impending peril and start barking incessantly. The facility's security system, the supercomputer Red Queen, detects the virus leakage and seals all exits to prevent it from spreading to the outside world. People think it's just a regular fire drill, but soon they realize things are not that simple. Red Queen not only prevents everyone infected with the virus from leaving but also employs various means to kill them, using lethal gas, drowning, or fatal elevator accidents. The horror of the T-virus is beyond imagination, as Red Queen does whatever it takes to contain the outbreak. The movie takes a turn as Alice wakes up in the bathroom, but she realizes she has lost her memory. She only remembers collapsing and finds the mansion she's in very unfamiliar. When she finds a wedding photo on the table, but she remembers nothing, suddenly, a figure flashed from behind. Alice immediately followed it, but who knew that just after opening the door to the room, a strange man suddenly hugged Alice from behind and tried to pull her out of the place. Before Alice could figure out what was going on, several more heavily armed men appeared and broke through the window, and the man was overpowered on the spot. The man claims to be a cop, but the others pay no heed. One of them approaches Alice, demanding an immediate report, leaving her more bewildered. Another team member realizes that the mansion has activated its defense system, releasing gas that induces temporary unconsciousness. Alice is likely affected by the side effects of the gas, causing her amnesia, and this man who claimed to be Matt, according to the ID he provided, the team realized that there was no information about him in the police department's system at all. However, due to the time constraints, one had no choice but to order them to enter the Hive together. When a secret door was opened, a secret passageway came into view. Inside was parked a train that would take them straight to the Hive's experimental base. But shortly after they set off, they discovered an unconscious man inside one of the train compartments. Like Alice, he had lost his memory due to the effects of the anesthetic gas. Alice realized that this man was the same person as the one in the wedding photo, and some scattered memories started to return. Soon, the group arrived at their destination, just as they were about to open the main gate of the Hive. Alice questioned one about what was going on. Reluctantly, one confessed that they, like Alice, were soldiers employed by the Umbrella Corporation. Her mansion served as an emergency entrance to the Hive, and both she and the man in the wedding photo were security personnel protecting the entrance. Even their marriage was a sham, all designed to conceal the existence of the Hive. Now, an accident had occurred inside the Hive, and the supercomputer Red Queen had activated the security system, killing all the staff inside. Their mission was to shut down Red Queen and find out what had happened. Soon, the steel door was opened, and the team entered the Hive's interior. The members quickly checked if there were any toxic gases in the air and confirmed everything was fine. As the lift was damaged, they had to descend to the depths via the stairs. However, on their way to the Red Queen mainframe room, they discovered that the entire laboratory floor was flooded. They had to choose an alternative route to proceed. However, they didn't realize that the drowned employee in the experiment had opened his eyes. The team then opens a door. The map shows it as a canteen, but it's actually a huge warehouse full of containers, with the floor covered in thick tubes containing creatures that have never been seen before. One instructed 2 team members and Matt to stay in place while he continued with the rest towards the mainframe room. After passing through the warehouse, the team finally arrived at the door to the mainframe room. Kaplan's work has resulted in the opening of the steel door, but to get into the engine room, you have to go through a transparent passageway, and at the end of it, there's another door. Kaplan, with everyone's expectations on him, managed to open the door, but as a few team members entered the passage with the equipment to shut down Red Queen, the 2 steel doors suddenly closed again. Red Queen had activated the defense system's weapons. Kaplan tried to stop it but found it much more complicated than anticipated. What followed was the most iconic scene in the movie. Laser beams formed on both sides of the passage, rapidly approaching them. Although one and the other 2 managed to dodge in time, one team member had several fingers sliced off, while the female soldier behind them had her head sliced off. Even more terrifying, the lasers didn't stop there. Another round of lasers quickly followed, and a team member who tried to jump and avoid them had the lasers change their trajectory and cut him in half. One managed to avoid being hit by grabbing onto a ledge above, but Kaplan struggled to shut down the weapon system. Unfortunately, the lasers gave one no chance, and the next attack left him with no escape. As the steel door opened, everyone was horrified by the sight before them. Before even entering the mainframe room, they had already lost half of their team members, but at this point, they couldn't give up. Kaplan walked into the room nervously, holding the device, ready to proceed with the mission. Alice decides to follow him and join the action. They reached the mainframe room smoothly. However, as they were installing the device on the mainframe, Red Queen's holographic projection suddenly appeared, pleading with them not to proceed as it would lead to even more dreadful consequences. Ignoring the warning, Kaplan went ahead and shut down Red Queen's mainframe. With Red Queen shut down, the entire base's security system collapsed, and the experimental subjects in the containers started to become active. All the safety doors were opened to prevent Red Queen from restarting. Kaplan took its mainboard. However, the 3 waiting in the warehouse hear an unusual sound. Rain goes to investigate with her weapon, only to find a researcher. Unaware that the researcher has been infected with the T-virus and turned into a zombie, she is bitten hard and pinned to the ground. Fortunately, JD arrives in time to pull the zombie away. Seeing the wound on Rain's arm, JD immediately pulls out his gun and warns the researcher to stay put, but the researcher ignores the warning and stands up again. JD fired a shot at the researcher's leg, but it had no effect. One more shot and still no response. Realizing that the man in front of him is not a simple man, Rain unleashes a barrage of bullets, finally bringing the zombie down to the ground. The others arrived just in time. The dead bodies suddenly disappeared, and the blood on the floor had already congealed. Matt noted that only dead people's blood would behave that way. Before they could understand the situation, more zombies attacked from all directions. The team realizes the gravity of the situation and starts firing back at the twisted and terrifying creatures. However, they discover that these monsters cannot be killed easily. Accidentally shot a container, causing it to explode instantly. The team was forced to separate in the chaos. Matt was surrounded by zombies, while more monsters tried to break free from other containers. Fortunately, Alice arrived in time to rescue Matt. Meanwhile, the others reached the elevator, but as JD entered the password to open it, he were overwhelmed by a group of zombies. Rain tries to save JD, to no avail, and gets bitten by the zombie a few times again. To make matters worse, the battle awakened an aggressive and ferocious creature that broke free from one of the containers. As Alice continued walking, she realized that Matt was nowhere to be seen behind her. Alice can only look around for Matt, but she comes to the room where the dog is kept, and the dog inside the cage is long gone. Suddenly, she heard a strange noise from behind and turned around to see a zombie dog approaching. Feeling uneasy, she quickly ran into the adjacent laboratory and locked the pursuing zombie dog outside. To her surprise, there was another zombie inside the lab. Acting on instinct, Alice fought back and effortlessly kicked the zombie away. Amazed by her own abilities, she reminded herself that being a security personnel, having some combat skills was expected. Just as Alice was about to take the weapon from the zombie's body, another zombie dog broke in through the window. Quick on her feet, Alice escaped the lab, but as she turned around, she discovered that more zombie dogs were already waiting for her. Alice immediately opened fire and took down all the zombie dogs outside. However, the zombie dog from the lab reappeared and lunged at her once again. Alice agilely jumped onto a wall and executed a flying kick, easily dealing with the threat. Meanwhile, Matt was alone in the office area, searching for something, when suddenly a zombie attacked him. In a critical moment, Alice arrived just in time to save Matt's life. Alice remembered that she seemed to have made some kind of deal with the person lying on the ground. At the same time, Matt revealed his purpose for being there. He was not a police officer but a journalist. The girl lying on the ground was Matt's sister. Matt's sister had infiltrated the Hive to expose the Umbrella Corporation's secret genetic research. She intended to steal the T-virus sample for exposure, but tragically lost her life before completing the mission. Matt knew that his sister had a contact inside the Hive who was helping her with the task. He suspected that everything happening now was orchestrated by that contact, who not only betrayed his sister but also kept the valuable T-virus for himself. Recalling the images flashing in her mind, Alice suddenly realized that she might be the contact, but her memories were fuzzy, so she kept it to herself. They then fled to the mainframe room again, pursued by the zombies, where they also met a few of their separated teammates. All exits were blocked by zombies, leaving them completely stranded. To make matters worse, if they couldn't escape within an hour, they would be trapped in the Hive forever because Umbrella Corporation had set up airtight doors leading to the mansion's exit, scheduled to close in 1 hour. Alice didn't want to sit and wait for their doom, so she decided to restart the supercomputer Red Queen, hoping it might help them escape. But to prevent Red Queen from running amok, Kaplan had the system's main circuit breaker switched off. With the push of a button, he could fry Red Queen's motherboard at any time. The reactivated Red Queen tells the group that the T-virus is a virus that can bring people back from the dead, but those who are brought back to life are unintelligent and bloodthirsty. Getting scratched or bitten by them would result in infection, and only headshots or severing the spine could kill them. With Red Queen's guidance, the team found a secret passage to escape from the mainframe room, but to their surprise, even this route was infested with zombies. Alice leaped and swiftly took down one of the zombies with a scissor kick, but their numbers were overwhelming, and the group was about to be surrounded. They had no choice but to climb up the pipes. Rain, who was covering their rear, got bitten by a zombie again, but she managed to struggle and climb up as well. The group continued forward through the pipes, with the zombies relentlessly chasing from below. Suddenly, the steel wire supporting them couldn't bear the weight and snapped. Everyone else made it through safely, except for Kaplan, who fell down into the midst of the zombie horde, driven by the will to survive. Kaplan climbed up another pipe. Alice wanted to go and rescue Kaplan, but he urged them to leave because he knew he couldn't escape. Once the others had gone, Kaplan, in despair, pointed the gun at himself, but in the end, he couldn't pull the trigger. He used his last bullet to kill one of the zombies and then struggled to climb further through the pipe. At this point, the remaining few people once again through the laboratory. Looking at the familiar surroundings, Alice regained some memories. She remembered that blue represented the virus, and green was the antidote. She immediately went to the place where the virus was stored. Matt was curious about how Alice knew all this, and she reluctantly revealed that she was his sister's contact and was planning to steal the T-virus. Alice was anxious to find the antidote but discovered that it had already been looted, and Rain can't hold on much longer. At that moment, Alice's fake husband, Spence, seemed to remember something too. He was the one who stole the T-virus. He overheard their plan and knew the virus was valuable, so he stole it using his security personnel identity. He also deliberately smashed a vial to cause chaos as he left the Hive. But he didn't expect Red Queen to activate the defense system and release the anesthetic gas. Spence passed out on the train before he could escape. Alice seemed to sense something was amiss, but before she could reach for the handgun on the table, Spence beat her to it. Spence tried to persuade the others to follow him and escape together. He suggested selling the T-virus and living a life of wealth and freedom. However, Alice and the rest of the group couldn't possibly agree to such a plan. Unbeknownst to him, just then a zombie soaking in the water suddenly and slowly got up. Spence was oblivious and got attacked from behind by the zombie, but he quickly retaliated and shot it down. As the others prepared to subdue Spence, he thwarted their attempts and threatened Alice not to come any closer. He then left the laboratory and locked the steel door behind him. Spence swiftly made his way to the train station and found the dropped backpack on the train. As he was about to inject himself with the antidote, he heard strange noises. Looking up, he saw the creature in the container. Terrified, Spence froze in place, but before he could escape, the creature pounced on him and killed him. The creature that ate Spence then underwent another evolution, which was broadcast live by Red Queen. Everyone in the laboratory witnessed it. Red Queen explained that this was an early experiment of the Hive, and once the creatures fed, they would evolve into deadlier liquors. With less than 20 minutes left before the airtight doors closed, They needed the password from Red Queen to get out. But to get the code to get out from Red Queen, you have to exchange it with Rain's life. Because Red Queen doesn't want anyone infected with the virus to leave this place. Alice refused, but the lickers were closing in. Attracted by the smell of blood, as the glass was about to shatter, Red Queen shut down again, the steel door behind them opened, and Kaplan, who had escaped death, came in. It was Kaplan who shut down Red Queen again. They hurried to the train station. They started the train and rushed away from the Hive. Unexpectedly, just after Alice injected Rain with the antidote, the lickers caught up with them. The sharp claws not only tore through the train's carriage but also injured Matt, who was nearby. Then, the back door of the train opened, and Kaplan, standing at the door, was dragged away by the lickers. Matt quickly ran over and closed the door, but the sturdy steel door couldn't withstand the lickers' attacks. Alice shot at the lickers, but it proved useless, and she was instead ensnared by its tongue on her thigh. In a critical moment, Matt pushed a bundle of steel pipes at the lickers. Alice seized the opportunity and picked up a fallen pipe, thrusting it through the licker's tongue. She yelled for Matt to open the door below, but Matt just picked up the gun on the ground, but found that the Rain behind him has been mutated. It seems to be infected for too long. The antidote did not play a role. Matt quickly shot Rain down and then opened the door below. As the train moved at high speed, the lickers caught fire due to the friction. Matt pressed the button to close the door. Eventually, they managed to escape to the villa before the lockdown was imminent. However, as Alice prepared to inject Matt with the antidote, a group of people in protective suits stormed in. Not only did they take Matt, they took Alice. When Alice woke up again, she found herself covered in needles. Despite the pain, she pulled out the needles and left the hospital room, only to discover that the entire hospital was empty. As she stepped outside, the streets were in complete chaos, resembling scenes from a doomsday scenario. It was evident that the zombie virus had spread widely.